Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's April 3rd, and we are going to talk today about how you can teach others to cook. That's super duper important. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to make a smoothie while I answer some frequently asked questions. I'm getting lots of similar questions about the Food Coach Academy. So I'm going to do that while I'm making my stress busting smoothie. And then we are going to, then I'm going to ask you for some topics. What do you want to hear me talk about? Right? So that'll be interesting. And I'll actually, you know what? So there is a spot you can click right now because I want to know what you want to hear. As the director of culinary medicine at Ruby, you know, if you've watched me many times, I can't do a one-on-one specific, but I do topics in general. So I can't answer questions like, how do you treat my heart disease? But I can certainly talk about heart disease and culinary medicine. I can also invite some guests because I know a ton of people. So either put that in the chat or you can email me. There's a hot link right now for you to do that. And I'll remind you towards the end as well. And then we're going to go through our PowerPoint. So we know what that is like already. All right, so now you're going to watch me make a smoothie, and I've included for you one of the handout about how to build a smoothie, because as you know that there are different categories and you get to choose the one that you want. So, I love my Vitamix. My Vitamix is, they're on sale once a year. So anyway, I highly recommend these. You want a high-speed blender so that you don't get those chunks in your teeth. But any way you can get it in is a good way. I always say, what is the best food? The one that you can access. For some of us, that's how it goes. So when I make a smoothie, the first thing I'm going to do is add some water. And the reason I do that is because I've learned the hard and some hemp seeds, very high in omega-3s. That's going to help create just an amazing cell membrane where all the healthy stuff's going to come through, and it is going to just make me be able to concentrate more and be able to deal with stress in the world. All right, so now I have some curcumin here. So this curcumin, you remember, that is the superpower for the brain. And curcumin is anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anti-almost everything. I'm going to add this. Now, we all know if we've studied curcumin that it does not work unless I add some pepper to it. It's a key and a lock. In order to get those great antioxidants, pepper is going to let them in. And now, kale. So again, I buy kale at Trader Joe's, but I don't use it often enough, these cut up ones. And so I just stick it in the freezer. So that way I don't have any food waste. I do not like food waste. I don't think anybody does really. And then I'm going to add a carrot. Why? Because it was in my fridge. So I'm going to add a carrot, and that's going to add some nice carotenoids. Cut that up, put that in there. And I want a healthy source of fat. Now, this is a brand new paring knife that I am being very careful with, because when I get a brand new knife and I don't know its personality, and this is why I needed the spoon. We're going to spoon that out. I don't want to cut myself, so I'm always a little cautious around a new knife. All right, so we got some healthy fats. We've got protein from the seeds, the chia seeds. Actually, weren't chia seeds, the other two seeds, flax and hemp. And we've got lots of bright colors. And we're gonna just put this on for a minute. So I'm gonna blend this. Usually I would have done that a little longer, so there'll be a little bit of flicky flakes, but don't worry about it. And I am going to answer the FAQs while I'm drinking my smoothie. And if I've got kale in my teeth, we'll survive. All right, let's see how this tastes. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. I'm going to drink it anyway. Why do I say that? It's a little thicker than I wanted, and that's from the avocado. I tend to like thinner, which I could do by adding more water. All right, so let's get to some of the frequently asked questions. Who is the Food Coach Academy for? Now, you can go to my website and actually sign up for a free 15-minute consultation. And this is where I'm getting most of these questions from. Who is it for? And the reason that question is complicated is because it's for so many different kinds of people. So I'm going to describe some of our food coaches. We've got a yoga instructor who wanted to add something else onto her private practice for her business. We have a community member who went to her community outreach center, and they are paying for her to teach their community members how to cook. And you're going to see a picture of her later. Hi, Danita. We have individuals that know how to cook or don't know how to cook, but that doesn't matter because we're not just teaching you to cook, we're teaching you how to teach others to cook. And it's also for any type of clinician that wants to add something onto their abilities, and coaches. We've got lots of coaches that want to add the skill building piece, which is the cooking piece. So that is who it is for. The second is, what can I do with a food coach certificate? Well, right now we are at the very beginning of a massive movement called the Food is Medicine movement. And with it, just like we saw with complementary medicine, we're going to see this evolve over the next decade. Because I was involved in the complementary medicine movement, I was able to know that we're going to need food coaches to support, because what we do know is that the docs are too busy, the dietitians, there might be not enough of them, and we want everyone really going and working at the top of their license. But those skill builders, those community members, they are going to be essential in the Food is Medicine movement. So you can take your food coach certificate and go anywhere with it. You can work in an employer's office. You can have your own business. You can work at a doctor's office. You can work at a community center. I always say, if you have that desire to help people heal through food and you want to be the at the elbow support, that's who the Food Coach Academy is for. And the third one is, how do I sign up? And that's super easy. You just go to my website, drdebkennedy.com. You'll see Food Coach Academy there. You'll learn about the 13 different modules. You can take your time, and then you just click a link and you go over to the Ruby side, and there you have our low, and you'll see it. There's a lower price, and we also have a payment plan. So those are the frequently asked questions. And while you are watching the PowerPoint, while I drink my smoothie, think about what topics you want to learn about. All right, so I'm going to go over to the PowerPoint right now. And I am going to turn it on. All right. View, presenter view. All right, so this is what I was referring to before. So for a limited time only, we have the $4,200 off. And let's get into why you are here today. You want to know how to teach others to cook. Now, your role isn't just about transferring your knowledge, it's unlocking their confidence. And I love this saying. And it is because people have the ability to cook. We've been doing it for a million years, and we just need to give people the confidence to play around with food again, I'm giving people permission to play with food. As long as you don't waste it and throw it at people, you can play with your food. That's how we've always learned how to cook, always. And it shouldn't be any different now. So the food coach philosophy is that everybody has a food story inside of them and a unique palate. So when you are talking to an individual person, you want to get to know what is driving their food choices. And you want to also be able to identify how they taste. And that's where we start. And we coach them and we look at our client as the leading expert in their life, because they are. We may think it's super easy for them to adopt certain changes, but we have no idea how many wee ones are running around the kitchen. Someone might be out of work. We have no idea. So we always let the expert, our client, take the lead in their own life. And we teach skills. Again, it doesn't have to be perfection. It's a learning curve. It's something that, we've done our whole lives when we were evolving, right? I mean, a lot of societies still spend a lot of time and they teach their wee ones how to do it. But so by the time they get to be adults, they've been practicing for over a decade. And we also honor tradition, accessibility, and personal agency. Because what we want to do is we want to empower people to feel what's called self-efficacy. So they're proud of themselves. They can take care of themselves and their families because they know how to cook with inexpensive ingredients. Now, I know someone asked this in the questions already. So the essential elements when you are teaching someone how to cook is that you need to be flavor focused. So if you are not creating flavorful meals, snacks, beverages, the individual isn't going to be consuming them. So it is not even worth teaching someone how to cook if you can't do it in a way that they find delicious, right? Also, it needs to be culturally sound. So I am a proponent for helping individuals add new things onto their diet, but first I want to honor where they're at and what they feel most comfortable with. And so that's where I usually start, is finding out what spices they're used to, what flavors they really like. And then when I'm able to teach them how to roast vegetables, for instance, or stir fry vegetables, I might say, hey, do you want to try maybe a different spice here? It needs to be affordable, both in terms of the time it takes someone to cook, as well as the cost. Individuals, what research says is individuals, if they have to buy something that is foreign to them, and they end up throwing it out, they're not going to do it again. They do not like waste. Nobody likes waste. And then slow and steady, really, we're going to see about the modular approach. And if you follow me, you know that the modular approach is something I've been studying for the past 15 years, and it's scientifically based. So if you, again, this isn't going to be new if you followed me. So we make 220 food decisions a day, which is a lot. And while we're following or have in our minds 160 dietary recommendations. Now, I don't think the person on the street's going to know more than maybe 5 of them, but there is a lot of dietary recommendations. And so instead of exponentially multiplying 220 by 160 and all the different options there are, what I researched is, what if we took food and we broke food up into discrete courses, discrete modules, so that you, the end user, the one who's learning how to eat more healthfully and learning how to cook, you get to master one thing at a time before you add something else on. Research also shows that instead of, a whole approach where you throw everything at them, individuals, if you want the changes to be sustainable, need to be done in incremental small steps, or bites, as I like to say. So we have protein as a course. We have both animal and plant protein as a course, fat, grains, dairy and dairy alternatives, fruit, vegetables, beverages, sweets, and sodium. And your client, the person that you're teaching something to, you can ask them, what would you like to focus on right now? Now, I thought about this, about teaching you how to teach others to cook. There are various ways. The first one is the one-on-one coaching method, But also what we'll talk about after this is how to set up a teaching kitchen where you're teaching more than one person at a time. So you always want to start with someone's goal. Do they have a specific goal? Like, I want to get dairy out of my diet. And you know that's pretty specific, and your job is to help them to switch non-dairy alternatives that also have that nutrient profile to help them remain to remain having bone health from the calcium and other nutrients that are essential as well. Or is it more broad? I just want to eat healthier. Some people that you're going to be working with either will have had a clinician already give them a prescription. I need you to eat more vegetables. I need you to eat less fat, for instance. You don't get into the macronutrients and micronutrients. That's for a dietitian to do. So it's really important that you stay in your lane. You are not a dietitian. You're not a clinician. You are taking the recommendation and you're transforming that into what shows up on the plate. And you want to know who you're working with. What do they have in their kitchen? Some people might just have a microwave, while others have the air fryer and the crock pot and the Instapot and the rice maker and all of that. But some might just have one induction burner or a microwave. And you need to tailor what you're teaching them to be able to use what they have available, or else it's not useful to them. And what do they have in the kitchen? Do they have the blenders like I showed you? Do they have the food processor like a Cuisinart, bowls, strainers, mixing spoons? And do they have the 3 essential knives that are the basics for cooking? The paring knife, the chef knife, those 2 for sure. And then if they can afford a third, the serrated knife. So now we're going to go through the basic steps for teaching someone how to cook. You're building trust first and foremost, and you're creating this curiosity feeling to what you are doing. You're not coming in as the grand poobah, the one who knows it all, and they are to gain your knowledge, right? So it starts with, what foods do you like? What do you crave? And identifying their goals like we spoke about. And set the tone in a very supportive and collaborative manner, that this is a partnership. You are partnering with them on their healing journey through food. Let me say that again. You are partnering with them on their healing journey through food. Now, you want to orient them to the kitchen environment by introducing the knives, the cutting boards, and go over the basics in food safety. You'll be doing this throughout your cooking. So if you're using something like an animal meat product, then you'll go over where you store it in the fridge and how you use a different cutting board. And that is specific to what it is you're actually teaching them at the time. And mise en place, gotta love mise en place, especially if you're working with somebody who has a very busy life. And I haven't met someone yet who didn't, so that they know that if there's something missing in what you've put out in your mise en place, that it isn't in the recipe yet. And so then they know, oops, I forgot this, and we'll put it in the recipe. And you're going to begin with simple and whole food. So again, following that modular approach, do they want to focus on vegetables? And then you want to teach them some basic cooking methods. And this will require you being able to teach them how to dice. So for instance, if you wanted to teach them how to make a salad, you will use the chef knife to cut up some carrots or some peppers. And you'll use the paring knife if you want to slice some mushrooms, or to slice a tomato, you're going to use the serrated knife. So you're teaching them about cutting skills, safety while you're at it, and then you are showing them the difference between what a roasted carrot tastes like versus a steamed carrot versus one that was stir-fried. And you want to keep it sensory. You want them to absorb the color, the texture, the smell, the taste. It's really a whole body experience. You want to get them totally out of their minds, not out of their minds, but from their minds into more of the feeling aspect. A lot of individuals, and I've seen this increase throughout the years, where they are so afraid of cooking, it's like you're asking them to go into a biochemistry lab and mix something in the test tube. And they need to know it's not like that. They need to know that there is room for error, a lot of error, unless they're baking, of course, and that's always the aside. But that it isn't just a science, it's an art form, and that we need a balance of both the art and science. So once they get to know you and you have this relaxed atmosphere, they'll begin to feel that this isn't biochemistry, that this is about their palate, what they like, and what they have access to. And you teach them how to transform that into something super delicious. And then it takes time. As I spoke about before, it usually takes, well, it usually takes a lifetime. I started cooking at the age of 4, and yeah, I was really good by the time I was 14, but I'm super better now at my age. And I continue to improve. Doing the Food Coach Academy, even my kids were like, Mom, what did you learn? Because you're even making better food. So we constantly learn and we constantly explore the world through what shows up on our plates. So you want to demonstrate and walk them through, and then you're going to guide them and let them do it. And then you're going to reflect back on them instead of saying, well, you cut this wrong, or it would be, oh, wow, look at these. These are the right size. These are uniform size. That's really great. With a lot of practice, they'll all be that size. Or ask them what surprised them. What did they notice? What did they find difficult? Do they need some more explanation? And what would they like to change? The next one is how to teach core techniques gradually, like we talked about with the knife skills, building on that. So whether or not if you have a client and they want 4 sessions, you would map this out in terms of increasing the type of cuts, the knife cuts, for instance, increasing the complexity of the cooking methods, and teaching them how to build flavor. We've learned about in the previous talks I've given and in the textbooks and at the Food Coach Academy, how you can make something so flavorful without relying on added salt, sugar, and fat. That you can add acid and cooking methods and different tastes, play on different tastes. And these become the background. This becomes their, I'm going to use this, it came to me and it wasn't meaning to make a joke, their palette, but I'm not talking about this palette, but the palette of which they are like an artist, and they're going to put in these spices and these tastes and this type of acid. And that becomes something that becomes their artistry, and they get to learn how to do that so they can bring it to any recipe and anything that they want to cook. And then continuing to tell them how to store food safely and how to reheat it safely so that they're not throwing out any food. And number 6, there's 10 of these, so bear with me. I know there's a lot of talking in this. You want to normalize mistakes and encourage play, right? So you want to mirror a calm reaction when something doesn't work. Oopsie, I like the word oopsie. Oopsie, all right, let's try this a different way. Oh, I've seen lots of people do it like that. Don't worry. It takes time. It takes time. Show how to troubleshoot or adjust. So for instance, if they oversalted a soup, you might teach them the dilution method by maybe adding some potatoes to absorb some of that salt, or increasing the amount of soup so that you dilute it so it doesn't have as much per serving. And then invite experimentation, asking them, this is how you're going to have them broaden their palate, right? What if we tried a different type of spice? Now with recipes, the last session I did was about recipes, because they're learning tools, not rules. So you need to teach an individual what the ingredients, what they play in that recipe. So what is the mustard doing in a vinaigrette? Well, it's helping to bind it all together, right? And what is, like, for instance, if they wanted to trade one leafy green for another, that's totally fine. That's not going to change the salad. It's just going to help them learn to use things that they like. So you want to emphasize substitutions and personalization and encourage it with guidance. It's really important that you find out what they have. So if you go in there with something and that's going to require them to buy something that they don't like, don't want to spend the money on because they don't want to throw it out, that's not doing your job teaching them how to cook. So you want to know, what's really available to them, what they like. So at the end of maybe one cooking session, you're going to talk about what you hope to teach them next week, and then ask them those questions. What spices do you want to use in this? What type of vegetables? So that you teach them how to be able to substitute from one class to another. And then you want to make space for cultural and personal connections, because food is all about connections. Number 1, 2, and 3. It's about connecting to ourselves, each other, and communities. So asking them what family recipes do they want to share? So for instance, if they say, well, we usually make this mac and cheese, and this is like the favorite of our family, you can, and then if it's a class with more than one people, they get to share their recipes. And then you can suggest, do you want to know how to make a mac and cheese with plant-based ingredients that's healthier for you? Knowing full well that a family mac and cheese, you don't want to replace it, but maybe some of the time they can have a healthier option. So asking them about their heritage and telling them that food is about story, and you want them to share their story with you so you can understand where their choices are coming from. Number 9, reinforce with reflection and repetition. So you want to have them reflect upon what they just learned, whether that's from one class to the next class or at the end of the class, so that you can help them build their confidence. And if they didn't master that one cooking technique or that knife technique, you're going to use the next class to help them practice again, because it's not one and done. And we all know that if we all know how to cook. And then celebrate the progress, not just the process. Celebrate the progress, not just the product, encouraging curiosity and reminding them where they came from. I don't know about you, but I'm always like this. Like, I might not know something, but all of a sudden I'm really good at it, but I forgot where I came from. And I just think, oh, everyone can do this. But really showing them the path that they've come along will help to encourage them to continue along that path. So that's a mouthful. And that is what it is about teaching someone one-on-one. And now we're going to go into different types of teaching kitchens. And there are 3 types. You have the one that is about taste testing. And you see these usually at like farmers markets. You might see them in some grocery stores where somebody is cooking something and they're offering some samples. What this does for the individuals, it helps them broaden their diet. It's not necessarily teaching them how to cook, but it is broadening their diet. They might try something they haven't tried before. Maybe if they don't like, I've done this with kids all the time. I'll make smoothies with green stuff in them, and they do not like greens. But if you used baby spinach or baby kale, they're slurping that stuff down because they usually have their friends with them. The next one is a demonstration. And that's when someone is in front of a crowd. Doesn't matter how big the crowd is. It could be as little as 3, 2. It's just not a one-on-one. And you are just demonstrating. So for instance, I'm going up to Canada at the end of next month, and I'm going to be speaking to about 100 nutritionists and demonstrating how I put together a grain bowl. I'm not able to because the hotel doesn't have the ability for everybody to have hands-on, although that's always the best. With demonstration, you can build their knowledge. But the skill comes from the hands-on. When they are there and you have these hands-on teaching kitchens, you're seeing these pop up in hospitals, community centers, and even some grocery stores. So those are the 3 types of teaching kitchens. And a teaching kitchen is nothing more than when you combine nutrition education with culinary skill building. And here are some teaching kitchens that I have been around. The top left is that you could see the wheels on that. So when I worked at Dartmouth Hitchcock and the Weight and Wellness Center, we used to roll this outside of the conference center when clinicians were doing their weekly updates and having a seminar. And when they came out, they smelt us cooking something, and we gave them opportunities to taste it. So again, this was actually leading them with taste, because what we wanted them to do was take the handout we had about how to cook healthfully to offer that to their patients and to have conversations with their patients about the importance of cooking to eat healthfully. The one to the right of that, that's red and yellow, that's a really popular one. It's called the Charlie cart. You usually see this in elementary schools. There's not enough room for more than maybe one or two of the children to come up and maybe wash the vegetable or tear up the lettuce leaves. And that is a way to both demonstrate, so you're building their knowledge, and also it's always great if you can have something for them to taste, because kids will taste something they wouldn't normally taste if their friends are around. The one on the top right, that's Boston University's hospital teaching kitchen. They have the best teaching kitchen of any place I've ever heard about. They've got a garden on the rooftop. The docs actually prescribe cooking classes. They prescribe the food, the actual food they want them to pick up. I wish every hospital and community center had that. And then on the bottom left, there is our food coach in training, Danita. And what she has done since she began the Food Coach Academy is she has been teaching community cooking classes, and it is going really, really well. And she's able to take what she just learned in that one module to train others how to do it as well. The chef hat on the phone is just to depict that you can do some of this remotely, like what I'm doing right now, a remote kitchen. These are great options. Nothing's better than in person, but these are still great options. And what you see on the right, that's in San Antonio. This is both a portable teaching kitchen that's also a food pantry. And I wish every county had one of these, where you deliver food to the food insecure, and you're also, how cool is this? You're also like, maybe you're delivering, I don't know, kohlrabi, and they've never seen it before, or beets, and they've never seen it before in their culture. And you're actually cooking and showing them what to do with the produce you're giving them. The work I'm doing in Vermont right now with the food insecure, if they don't know what a food is, they're just not going to eat it, even if they are food insecure. So it's super important to teach people how to use the food that they receive. So I said before that the work site, so you can actually, there's a lot of like these lunch and learns and work sites. Google actually has a whole teaching kitchen that their employees come into. There might be something on cooking for Valentine's Day, or cooking for your first date, or cooking for heart disease. In the work site, they are really, really popular. Google set the stage for that. And then clinicians, what we know is that if clinicians actually learn how to cook themselves, that they have less of a chance of burning out, as well as they are going to be better at counseling their patients. I don't believe that they're going to have the time to teach others how to cook, because that's not what they signed up for. But I do hope that they learn how to cook themselves, because they will see the power of flavor in making healthy choices. And then community members, like we mentioned Danita before, that bringing people together. My goal and the foundation of the Food Coach Academy is to train community members how to eat for their health, so that we have like teaching like, and we're able to bust through the mistrust that a lot of underserved communities have with the medical system. And for the underserved population that's offering them becoming a food coach, they could actually have a skill for employment and knowing what to do with the food that is delivered to them. I always say in the food is medicine movement, if after the free produce and prescribed groceries and prescribed meals goes away, if they are not knowing how to cook for themselves and their families when you take that food away, they are more reliant on the healthcare system, and you have not built self-efficacy. In the elementary schools, this really is the missing piece of the puzzle. Elementary schools, most of them have a kitchen, but they haven't been used in a very long time. Now, I spent years building a Build Healthy Kids program. So I know that you're never going to get any time from a teacher to teach cooking except like I think in third grade, you get about an hour or two. But in the aftercare setting, where more and more kids are in the aftercare setting, that is the golden classroom, the kitchen, where kids get to play with food. They get all goopy and gooey, and they get to feel the food. They get to smell, they get to lick it before they actually taste it, because then it's not a stranger danger to them. And as I said before, cooking with others, even as adults, we're more likely to try something if one of our friends is asking us to try it. With higher education, it helps for those that are teaching, it helps them with their burnout and helping them to counsel their patients. In the clinics, it's called shared medical visits, and you could actually go in with the clinician. So the clinician will say, all right, I'm going to meet with people with diabetes this week. And then he's going to invite, or she's going to invite 10 people to show up at the same time. They're around a table, they're learning how to cook, they're tasting how to cook, they're sharing recipes. And oh, by the way, one by one, they're being pulled out by the clinician to do some blood testing. Probably they're testing their blood pressure, and they're having a conversation about their medicine, and then they go back to the group. That is what we're seeing starting to happen now in Food is Medicine. And then you could do this in senior centers and libraries, anywhere really that has access to a kitchen, or where you could bring an induction burner. One of the textbooks I wrote is about the kitchen. And if you are curious about how to set up a kitchen for success and how to set up a teaching kitchen, this will guide you through the whole entire process, and it's available on Amazon. And then with equity and diversity, I'm not going to go through each one of these because I want to give you time to be able to ask questions. And I've included that you can download a handout on equity and diversity, because that has to be essential in what you do. So when you're teaching someone how to cook, are you using culturally relevant food? Are they being taught in their language, at their skill level, at their cognitive level? There's a lot now that was put out by the USDA about trauma-informed, emotionally safe teaching, specifically as it comes to food. Some people you might be working with have had trauma in the past in terms of food insecurity, and you want to make sure that you are delicate in your teaching of them. And you want to empower them, to give them autonomy, and always, always give them choice. That's essential. And that you want them represented in your curriculum, and that you use what they have available in their home. So if you're teaching them how to use a sous vide machine and they don't have one, well, you wasted their time and yours. The recipes, we talked about them learning how to swap out ingredients, being culturally appropriate, working off a master recipe. If you followed me before, you know that I'm a big believer in they get to choose the ingredients, and you teach them how to make the soup, the stew, the sandwich, the salad. And you want to keep it positive, focus on community building, and have it be accessible. So that is a lot of talk about how to teach others to cook. It is completely different to learn how to cook yourself. And this is one of the things I get when people meet with me is actually on a scale of 1 to 5, most of my students score a 4. So they are pretty good at cooking. What they don't know how to do is to teach someone else how to cook. And that is what takes the 6 months to become a food coach to learn, because we go through motivational interviewing and culinary techniques and nutrition information and how to support your client in the best way possible. All right, so now I am going to switch over to the questions, because I know we have some questions. All right. So Mark, I answered your question in terms of what the essential elements are. And I am not seeing any questions. Oh, there we go. How do you charge for teaching? Is it per class, per hour? What's a good number to start with? All right, Lillian. You can have, people love bundled payments, right? So my cooking class is $99 for the first lesson, or you can get 4 lessons for $350. But again, you are going to exclude a lot of people who need your help, right? So that's why if you can do something as a group, people will be able to afford it. So it really depends on what your socioeconomic status is of the people that you are teaching. But for an hour long, I would say anywhere from $75 to $100, depending on how much experience that you have. I would start with maybe doing some teaching kitchen opportunities. You might do one for free and get clients that way, or are actually having a group of people and they pay $25. I do know in the food as medicine movement that this question has come up again and again and again. And actually, I just heard about one of the hospitals charging, I want to say $350 for 8 sessions. That sounds like a lot of money for rural individuals, but what I find is that you have to kind of start where the people are at. All right, Maria, what is the age range of people who really want to learn something in a cooking class? Oh, the wee ones, Maria, to the seniors. There isn't one age group that wants to learn more except new moms. New moms totally want to learn something, and somebody who just got a diagnosis really want to take a cooking class that will teach them how to cook for heart disease, diabetes, cancer, osteoporosis, osteopenia, whatever it is. Those that have had that impetus to, you've got to get going now. A lot of us think we can keep eating the way we're eating until we have this wake-up call. So people who've had a wake-up call, or they've given birth to a new one and they want to do it better for them than they did for themselves. All right. Mark, I've been steaming my vegetables a lot to minimize oil and best retain the nutrients, and wonder for more flavor if I can add herbs while they're steaming. No, you need to add the herbs after, or they're just going to melt. They're going to lose their flavor, and they're going to lose their phytonutrients with the high heat and the steam. So you want to, cut it up. You want to put the carrots on or let's just say carrots, whatever steamed vegetable you use. And then you want to sprinkle that on the top at the very end so that it maximizes flavor and maximizes the nutrients. Can you suggest the most simple list of kitchen utensils for those getting back on their feet from homelessness? Cindy, that is a great, great question. So I would start with, there are ways that in terms of saving money, going to a local secondhand store, or what we have here, we have these places that, you can get stuff for free. I've seen people put an ad on Facebook Marketplace, et cetera, but I definitely start with, well, it depends what they have in their house, right? So if they have, because I had this question before, someone said, well, when I was interviewing community health workers in Vermont who do work with the homeless that are getting rehoused, if you give them food and you expect them to cut it, but they don't have a counter, that doesn't work. So if they've got a counter and there can be a cutting board, then I would suggest the chef knife and the paring knife. I would suggest, a toaster oven can do a lot of things, or a microwave. Research shows that you can, that's one of the good ways of cooking to preserve some nutrients. And I personally don't have a microwave because I don't like the texture that comes out. But for someone who is homeless and getting on their feet, they can reheat a lot of things in that. So if they are getting free meals, they can make, heat it up. And then just some simple tools. So I would let them lead the way. So if they are getting free produce, I'd make sure they have a peeler, a cutting board, and the 2 knives and a strainer, right? And if they're getting grains, I would want to make sure they have a pot with a lid, right? So that's how I would answer that question. The smoothie recipe that I just did, Deborah, Ooh, I don't even remember what I just did, Deborah, because it changes every time, but I do remember. So what it was it was equal amount. It was about a cup of raspberries, a cup of blueberries. We had a cup of kale. I had a tablespoon of I keep saying chia seeds. You could use chia seeds instead, but I use the other two, which are flax seeds and hemp seeds, half an avocado, and then I put that curcumin in, right? From the turmeric with a little bit of black pepper, and that's what made this delicious drink. Yeah, it is kind of delicious. Anyway, so I can't wait to hear what type of topics that you want to hear about next month. Let's see if there's any more questions. Hi, P. Hi, P. I hope you're doing well. All right. And what platform, Zoom, YouTube, would you recommend using for online cooking class? Tony. I use, all right, so Zoom. I prefer Zoom. And then YouTube is where I wouldn't use YouTube at all because, all right, so let me back up for a second, Tony. So when I am actually creating or doing the cooking classes, Zoom to me is the easiest. When the classes are done and I want to put them up on a site where people can watch them again, or you give them, they have to pay for them again. I don't put them on YouTube because when you run a video on YouTube, you get all these other videos that pop up on the right-hand side, and some appropriate, some really not appropriate. And it doesn't really look professional, but Vimeo, Vimeo, is a place where you can store your videos. Again, you might want to do that after you've had a little bit of success because there's, a yearly charge to use it, but that's actually what I use. And I think that is it. Well, everybody, I hope wherever you are, spring is a springin', and that you eat healthfully. Thank you for joining me today.